Have you ever wondered what happens to your mind at the moment of death? What if I told you that, right after your last breath, you could experience something beyond anything a human being has ever imagined? According to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, death is not just the end but a portal to a new reality, where consciousness is freed from the physical body's limitations. In this moment, an intense and pure light appears before the spirit, the clear light, which represents the true nature of the mind. But how can we recognize this light at the moment of death, and why is it so crucial for our liberation? Are we truly prepared for what awaits us after death? And how can we, while still alive, prepare ourselves for this transcendental experience? The answer lies in the very moment of death, or the Chikai Bardo. As the physical body begins to shut down, the mind is released from sensory limitations and begins to perceive a reality beyond the material world. The key issue is that, if the soul fails to recognize this light, it becomes lost in the distractions of the process, enveloped by illusions and accumulated karma. It is the first great opportunity for liberation, or the first great trap, should the mind remain untrained. If you're fascinated by this exploration into the mysteries of life and death, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. By doing so, you'll join a community eager to uncover profound insights that could change the way you view the world and even your own existence. Don't miss out on what's to come. Hit that like button now. The light that appears at the moment of death is described as clear, pure, and unchanging, representing the essence of our true nature. Those who, throughout their lives, have cultivated the ability to contemplate impermanence and emptiness can easily recognize this light and merge with it, achieving instant enlightenment and transcending the cycle of rebirth. However, for most people, the moment is filled with confusion and fear, as the ego, attachments, and unresolved desires cloud the perception. The key to liberation, therefore, lies in how the mind faces this decisive moment. The Tibetan Book of the Dead suggests that by cultivating meditation practices and reflecting on death while still alive, we can learn to recognize the clear light when it appears. This transforms the process of death from something to be feared into an opportunity to transcend everything that binds us to suffering. In this way, death, far from being a definitive end, becomes a passage to something much greater. After the moment of death, the soul finds itself in a realm beyond physical reality, where the boundaries of time and space no longer apply. In this state, the mind is free from the constraints of the body, and it enters a stage where its deepest tendencies and karmic imprints begin to manifest. This is a time of profound potential for liberation, yet it also holds immense challenges. At this critical point, the soul faces the clear light, a brilliant, radiant light that represents the true, unconditioned nature of consciousness. This light, described as pure and vast, is not just a symbolic representation of enlightenment, it is the very essence of the mind itself. For those who can recognize it, the experience is one of immediate liberation, where the soul transcends the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, achieving nirvana. However, the challenge lies in the soul's ability to recognize this light in its purest form. For most, the light is unfamiliar, and fear or confusion often arises. The soul might interpret it as something alien or threatening, rather than recognizing it as a reflection of its own essence. This failure to recognize the light leads to the soul's retreat into further stages of the bardo, where it becomes subjected to increasingly distorted and terrifying visions. At this juncture, one might ask, how does the soul's attachment to its past life and familiar identities prevent it from seeing the light for what it truly is? The answer lies in the fear of the unknown. For many, the mind's habitual attachments to physical form, identity, and desires cloud the clarity needed to embrace this pure, formless light. The soul's attachment to the familiar, whether it be to loved ones, material possessions, or even its own image, creates a resistance to the vast openness of the clear light. This attachment is a force that can draw the soul away from liberation, keeping it bound to the cycle of samsara. But for those who have prepared their minds through spiritual practice, particularly in recognizing the impermanence of life and the nature of the mind, the clear light is a profound opportunity. The soul, having faced this light with awareness, can pass through the bardo unscathed, free from the cycle of rebirth. For those unprepared, however, the journey through the bardo becomes more complicated as the soul moves into the next phase, encountering the Choniad Bardo, the realm of visions and projections shaped by its karmic history. As the soul moves beyond the experience of the clear light, it enters a realm where the mind begins to confront its own projections. In this state, the soul is no longer bound by physical form, and the nature of its consciousness becomes fully visible. This is where the deeper layers of the psyche emerge, with all the fears, desires, and unresolved emotions accumulated over lifetimes. The soul now faces the Realms of Bardo, a realm of visions that reflect the inner workings of the mind. In this stage, the soul encounters two main types of visions, the peaceful and the wrathful. The peaceful visions manifest as serene and benevolent deities, often appearing as compassionate Buddhas, bodhisattvas, or celestial beings. These figures embody the highest qualities of consciousness, love, wisdom, and kindness. For a soul that has prepared itself, these peaceful visions are familiar and welcoming, offering a sense of peace and connection. However, for those who are unprepared or who have unresolved attachments, these figures may be overwhelming or difficult to comprehend. The soul might reject these visions, unable to recognize them as expressions of its own potential. If the soul fails to recognize the peaceful deities for what they truly are, the next phase is marked by the appearance of wrathful deities. These figures are terrifying, often monstrous, and embody the darker, more destructive forces within the mind. They represent the intense fear, anger, and desire that the soul has not yet transcended. These wrathful deities are not malevolent external beings, but rather reflections of the soul's own unresolved karma. They are part of the soul's inner turmoil, arising to challenge its ability to overcome attachments and embrace the true nature of reality. At this point, the soul is presented with an important choice. It can choose to face the wrathful deities with understanding, recognizing them as its own mental projections, or it can allow fear and confusion to drive it further into delusion. For those who are able to see through these projections, the path to liberation becomes clear. The soul can recognize the illusion of duality and move closer to enlightenment. But for those who remain trapped in fear, the journey becomes more complex, and the soul is pulled deeper into the cycle of rebirth. The Realms of Bardo teaches that the mind, when freed from the constraints of the body, becomes a powerful force. It is capable of creating vivid, intense experiences that can either lead to liberation or further entrapment. The key to transcending this stage lies in the ability to recognize the true nature of the mind without attachment or fear. As the soul progresses further into the journey of transformation, it reaches a point where the mind's attachments and illusions continue to shape its experience. Now, the soul is faced with a crucial choice: to continue its cycle of rebirth or to transcend the illusions and reach liberation. In this phase, the soul must confront the deeply ingrained habits, desires, and fears that have carried it through countless lifetimes. At this point in the journey, the soul's focus must shift away from the powerful visions it has encountered in the earlier stages. The mind, which has been exposed to intense projections, both peaceful and wrathful, is now given the opportunity to recognize the true essence behind these visions. The soul is asked to let go of its attachment to these forms, realizing that they are simply mental creations with no inherent reality. But doing so is not easy. For most, the force of attachment remains strong, and the pull to enter into another cycle of life is overwhelming. This is where the soul must confront its deepest desires. The desire for a new body, for continuation in another life, is an innate impulse driven by karma, the accumulated actions, thoughts, and emotions from past lifetimes. These desires are what anchor the soul to the cycle of Samsara, the wheel of birth, death, and rebirth. The soul finds itself in a space where the attraction to a new body is like an instinctive pull, as if the very fabric of its consciousness is being drawn toward new experiences that will mirror its unresolved karma. Here, the soul witnesses the vision of couples in union, symbolic of the creation of new life. These visions represent the possibility of rebirth. They carry with them the allure of a new beginning, but also the inevitability of repeating past patterns and suffering. The soul's ability to navigate this moment with awareness becomes crucial. If the soul can maintain a state of detachment, it will realize that these desires and visions are not real, they are temporary and illusory projections of the mind. But for those who succumb to attachment and the urge for rebirth, they are drawn into the cycle once again. In this state of heightened awareness, the soul is confronted with the opportunity for transcendence. It must decide whether to succumb to the desires of rebirth or to break free from the cycle entirely, merging into the clarity of the ultimate light. This decision marks the final threshold where the soul either remains trapped in samsara or reaches enlightenment, free from the illusions that have kept it bound. The path to liberation lies in the soul's ability to see through the veil of illusion, recognizing that all visions, desires, and attachments are mere reflections of the mind's projections. Only by letting go of these attachments can the soul experience true freedom. As the soul continues its journey, it encounters one final challenge, the overwhelming force of desire and the urge for rebirth. Here the mind is presented with the clearest reflection of its karmic tendencies. The soul, still influenced by past attachments and unfulfilled desires, faces a profound decision, one that will either keep it bound to the cycle of life and death or free it from all suffering. At this stage, the soul is drawn to the idea of a new existence, not consciously but through an instinctive pull toward a new body. This pull, often likened to a deep, unconscious desire, reflects the soul's unresolved karma, the desires, fears, and emotional residues carried over from previous lifetimes. The soul is subconsciously guided toward the choice of its next body, and in this moment, the soul is presented with visions of couples in union. These images, symbolic of the creation of new life, represent the possibility of rebirth. But for the awakened soul, there is a crucial realization: the desire for rebirth is nothing more than an illusion, a powerful magnetic force shaped by the mind's attachments. If the soul is able to see beyond this pull, it will recognize the impermanence of these desires. The karmic forces that shape the soul's experience are not fixed or unchangeable. They are simply mental projections that can be transcended. This is where true liberation begins. The key is to recognize the emptiness of these desires, understanding that they are but fleeting experiences, temporary reflections of the mind's projections. For those who maintain clarity and detachment during this stage, liberation is possible. They can see that the entire cycle of samsara life, death, and rebirth is simply a series of mental constructs. The soul, freed from the chains of attachment, can now merge with the clear light, the primordial essence of all existence. This state of ultimate clarity is beyond any concept of life or death. It is a place of profound peace, where the soul is no longer bound by the need for rebirth, having transcended all attachments and illusions. However, for those who continue to be swept by their desires, the pull toward rebirth remains irresistible. They may return to the cycle of samsara, trapped once again in the wheel of suffering, until they are ready to break free. The key lies in the soul's ability to recognize the truth of its own nature and to let go of the illusions that bind it to the cycle of life and death. The journey is long, but through awareness, detachment, and deep understanding, liberation is always within reach. As the soul continues its passage through the Bardo, it begins to face the most intense and difficult phase of the journey, the stage where all that remains is the choice between liberation and continued suffering. In this moment, the soul is overwhelmed by the force of its own desires and the deep attachment to a future existence. Yet, this is also the most potent opportunity for enlightenment, as it is in this very state of intense craving that the truth can be revealed. The soul finds itself once again in the presence of powerful visions, often depicting the union of a man and a woman. These images symbolize the formation of new life, a reminder that the soul is now being drawn toward rebirth. For those who are unprepared, these visions may seem entirely real, igniting the instinctual desire for a new body, for another chance at life. The pull is magnetic, almost impossible to resist. The soul, in its ignorance, is unaware that it is merely being lured by its own projections, its own attachments and fears. At this moment, the most profound test arises. Will the soul recognize the transient nature of its desires? Can it see beyond the allure of a new life, understanding that it is simply a continuation of the suffering and attachment that has already been experienced? The teaching suggests that if the soul can detach from this powerful pull, it will find liberation. The clarity of the mind will allow the soul to understand that all desires, whether for a new body or for experiences in the material world, are nothing but illusions, ephemeral and devoid of real substance. This realization brings with it the key to breaking free from the cycle of samsara, the endless loop of birth and death. For those who can recognize the clear light, the very essence of their being, the door to liberation opens. The mind, no longer trapped by the desires of the physical world, is free to merge with this eternal light. It is at this moment that the soul can transcend the cycle, leaving behind the need for rebirth. However, for the soul still bound by attachment, the choice is often unclear. The magnetic pull of desires remains too strong to resist, and the soul may once again choose a new body, unknowingly setting itself back on the path of suffering. The journey is long and fraught with obstacles, but the opportunity for liberation is always present, waiting for the soul to awaken to its true nature. As the soul moves deeper into its journey through the Bardo, the experiences it faces become increasingly profound and challenging. Now the soul is confronted with the final opportunity to choose its fate, whether to remain trapped within the cycle of rebirth or to recognize the deeper truth of its existence. At this stage, the soul is still influenced by its karmic tendencies, yet it faces one of the most significant tests, the choice of the body it will inhabit in its next life. This decision is not conscious but driven by the soul's deep-seated fears, desires, and unresolved emotions from past lifetimes. In this moment, the soul is drawn to visions of potential rebirth, images of new forms, new bodies, and the illusion of another chance at life. These visions often appear as representations of sexual union, symbolizing the creation of a new life. The soul feels a strong, almost magnetic pull toward these visions, despite the fact that they are merely reflections of its own karmic baggage. This is where the most crucial choice lies. Will the soul continue to be led by its desires and attachments? Or will it recognize that these visions are nothing more than projections of the mind, fleeting and insubstantial? For those unprepared, the allure of rebirth is irresistible. The soul, bound by its attachments and the familiar comforts of existence, may unknowingly choose to enter a new body, perpetuating the cycle of suffering and ignorance. The karmic forces that have been accumulated over lifetimes push the soul toward the path of reincarnation, reinforcing the need to experience yet another cycle of life and death. The desire for a new form of existence becomes so powerful that it overshadows the possibility of liberation. However, for those who are able to maintain a state of awareness and detachment, the Siddha Bardo offers the final chance to break free from the cycle. By recognizing the illusory nature of these desires and the transience of the visions, the soul can choose liberation instead of rebirth. The key lies in understanding that the body is not the true self, and that by relinquishing the attachment to a fixed identity, the soul can merge with the clear light, transcending the cycle of samsara. The Siddha Bardo represents the last opportunity to transcend all illusions and attachments, to release the grasp of the ego, and to enter into a state of pure liberation. The choice is clear: rebirth or freedom, but the soul must be willing to let go of everything it believes itself to be in order to realize its true nature and escape the endless cycle of suffering. As the soul faces the ultimate crossroads in its journey, it encounters the final phase of the Bardo. This stage is not just a choice but a profound moment of realization. Here, the soul comes face to face with the deepest aspects of itself, the essence that has been obscured by attachments, desires, and illusions. For many, this is the moment of reckoning, where they must confront whether they will continue to cling to the illusion of a separate self or surrender to the universal truth that all beings are interconnected and impermanent. The clarity of this moment is overwhelming, and for those who have not prepared through spiritual practices such as meditation and mindfulness, the desire to return to physical existence may still dominate. The familiar pull of rebirth, the temptation to choose a new life, a new form, can feel overpowering. Yet those who have cultivated awareness and detachment throughout their lives may experience a different perspective. Rather than being swept up in the emotional pull of these visions, they begin to see them for what they truly are: projections of their own mind, fleeting and insubstantial. In this state, the soul is given the opportunity to merge with the clear light, the ultimate essence of all consciousness. The clear light is described as an all-encompassing, radiant force, representing the primordial awareness that transcends individual identity. It is not a light to be seen with the physical eyes, but a recognition of the inherent nature of the mind, the very source of all existence. In this moment of merging, the soul transcends the need for rebirth, entering into a state of liberation, free from the cycles of suffering and reincarnation. This final stage is not merely about escaping suffering, it is about realizing the truth of who we are beyond all the masks we wear. It is the profound recognition that death is not the end, but a transition, a return to the vastness from which we came. The Bardo teaches that through understanding death and impermanence, we can live with a sense of purpose and clarity, free from the fear and attachments that limit our potential. By recognizing the clear light and surrendering to it, the soul enters into a state of blissful liberation, where there is no more separation, no more suffering, and no more rebirth. This ultimate realization offers profound peace, as the soul comes to understand its true nature and the interconnectedness of all beings. In this state, there is no more fear, no more struggle, only the recognition of the vast, boundless presence of existence itself. If this exploration of life, death, and the possibility of liberation through the clear light has inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Your support helps us continue sharing these deep insights and spiritual teachings with you. If you found value in this video, share it with others who might benefit from it as well. Remember, understanding the nature of life and death is not just a philosophical pursuit, it's a way to live more fully, with clarity and purpose. Stay tuned for more content like this, and let's continue this journey together.